Hey, welcome to the Hell Has an Exit podcast. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 833-999-1877 to speak to a specialist. This show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com. Welcome to Hell Has an Exit. I'm your host, Brian Alzate. Today I have my good friend, Sam K. Sam, I appreciate you coming out here, dude.
Thank you,
It's a long
brother.
drive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Guy.
Of course.
One of the few people that I keep close to me that's also a treatment center owner. I think as people who own and operate treatment centers, I kind of don't really converse or hang out with other owners. It's just this weird industry, and especially in South Florida, there's just so many treatment centers that open up fly-by-night places. Since I've been clean, I've honestly never heard anything bad about you. You got a great reputation. You guys run a super clean operation. Appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Same goes for you. Yeah, I feel the same way. There is not many facilities down here that have kind of stood the test of time. You know, we're coming up on 8 years.
It's almost like if someone's still open during what we've gone through, they're a solid place.
Yes. So operating in today's industry is quite difficult.
Of course.
It's not what it was in the early days when any Joe Schmo could open a place, and you have to really put your patients first. You have to do right by your patients. You have to have a great, strong clinical staff. You have to have strong medical, strong nursing.
And even your reputation. Some people don't realize how tight-knit the recovery community is. And dude, you get on their bad side and they will feed you to the wolves.
They'll feed you to the wolves, yeah. Yeah, you have to be cutting edge too. You have to hire, I go out and I'll interview clinicians and stuff like that. And no offense to any of the older clinicians if you're listening to this, but some of them are operating like it's 1980 still, and it's not. And we're in a different world. It's 2023 with the opiate epidemic. The alcoholics are kind of always the same.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to reach a kid that's doing a drug that's killing people every day. So it's those kids don't give a fuck. We have clients that you could be like, dude, you're going to die. And they're like, I don't care.
I know.
And they're 19 years old.
Yeah. But yeah, I think imagine if that fentanyl was going on when we were using, we'd be dead.
Yeah, 1,000%. I tell all the clients, I was like, dude, there's no old opiate addicts.
They don't exist.
No, 5 years max. You don't see kids over 30.
No, they don't exist.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's scary.
Yeah, it's wild. So where are you from?
I grew up in Gaithersburg, Maryland, right outside Washington, D.C. Just classic middle America upbringing. Kind of grew up on the neighborhood that you'd see in any family TV show. Had a great childhood. My parents were married and together for, my entire childhood. It didn't really have anything terrible happen to me during my childhood. A lot of times, I hear and deal and I see people with incredible traumas and have gone through insane things. My wife being one of them, she had a really tough childhood. You can kind of understand where addiction come from, but that's where it doesn't really discriminate because it's I had a very normal upbringing.
I think opiates is the main thing that changed that because crack and heroin.
It did.
If you're doing crack and heroin at a young age, you have a fucked up life. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's you had some type of serious shit going on. Someone exposed you at a young age. You were molested. You had something go on.
Had a good childhood. Parents got divorced when I was about 15. Kind of had a choice, live with dad, live with mom. And at that time, it was less rules and more freedom. So let's go with dad. He was, more freedom. My brother went live with my mom, went with my dad. I was always a big partier, and I'm sure you can kind of, a lot of people can relate to this. I would go out and I would do cocaine for a month, maybe even every day for a month. And then I would stop for a few months. And I was like, how do people get addicted to this? You know what I mean? No problem. Go and do ecstasy for a couple of weeks, maybe a whole weekend at a event or a festival, whatever. No problem. I'd eat mushrooms here and there. No problem. I'd smoke weed every day. You know what I mean? But if I went a week without smoking weed, no problem. Go out and binge drink, go to parties for weeks at a time, and then I'd stop and I'd go back and I'd show up to school. I'd show up for my friends, and I was fine. That was kind of high school. I was never addicted to anything. I didn't understand what addiction meant. Because to me, I'm like, why would you ever get addicted to this stuff? It's fun for a little while, but eventually you just want to go back to, normal life. I just didn't get it. I remember saying that to myself all the time.
It was like Disney World.
It's like Disney World.
Yeah. Go there for a few days. Yes. You're not going to live there.
No, I'm not going to live it. It's an amusement park. It's fun. And then I come home.
You go home. Yeah, exactly.
It's exactly how it was. It's a great analogy.
I went to Disney World and I'm like, I'm staying.
Yeah. At one point, that's where it goes to. It all kind of really started summer going into college, I went and got my wisdom teeth out. And that was the first time I really got introduced to pain pills. And when they prescribed me pain pills after I got my wisdom teeth out, they gave me like insane, like they gave me like, I want to say 15 milligram oxycodone, which is pretty crazy for wisdom teeth. Like you could do that with maybe like 1 day of like.
1 day of painkillers and then Advil.
Yeah. Or even none at all. You know what I mean? Like you can go, or a non-narcotic painkiller. So, they were just prescribing like crazy. This is like 2006, 2007. So I took them. I remember my stepbrother telling me, he's like, hey, suck up the pain. He's like, and at the end of it, he's like, because it works differently when you're in pain. He's like, store them all. And he's like, just eat them all at once. You'll love it. So I was like, oh, that sounds great. You know what I mean? We want to go to Disney World, right? We don't want to stay there. I saved a bunch of them, kind of sucked up through the pain. And then I remember just like eating handfuls of them. And the first time I did it, I was like, this sucks. I was itchy.
Nauseous.
I was nauseous. I felt like shit. I'm like, why would anyone want to do these? I remember telling my stepbrother later at my parents' wedding, I'm like, that was horrible. There was nothing enjoyable about that. By the end of it, I kind of was like, you know what? I can kind of get like behind this. Like I could kind of take one and I'm like, oh, okay, I felt a little sharper today. Felt kind of a euphoria. And then it just stopped. Same thing. So I thought it was just like any other, substance that we just talked about. So I went off to college. I was in love with this girl. Could have gone to a bunch of schools, but decided to chase her down to a college in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Coastal Carolina University. So we get there and kind of all the friends we meet in the beginning, we all met together. So I get my group of like my 10 guys I meet off initially in college. She gets her group of 10 girls. We're all hanging out the first month or two. Then we break up. So I kind of like lost my like initial friends. So I became kind of like a loner, which is weird because I'm a very social person. I always keep a lot of friends. I start abusing the substances for the first time. And when I say abusing, I mean like really using, like I, for the first time, could not feel sober. I didn't want to feel normal anymore. And it started with Adderall and just being geeked out. Like I felt like a meth head running around school, prescribed substance again. And then it went to marijuana. I befriended someone who's still a very close friend of mine today. I'm actually the best man in his wedding, and he's in recovery as well. He was a year older than me, and he had got a house right off campus, but right next to my dorm room. So we became good friends, and I used to always go over to his house. And freshman year, his roommate, who's also a good friend of mine still today, was a really good basketball player, one of the star basketball players on the college team. And he was out at night drinking, and he was walking down the highway, and a drunk driver hit him, and he lost his leg. Wow. So he goes back to Maryland for a little while, gets a prosthetic on, and gets a Segway, and comes back down to school, and he's good. He's ready to go. And he has an unlimited supply of painkillers. And I kind of had remembered that euphoria and that feeling. Yeah. Obviously at that point, I'm like, okay, I don't have the girlfriend anymore. I really have like one friend now, other than like my friends back home. I felt really lonely, felt really like insecure. I just wasn't happy with myself or where my life was going. I was a failure, and like college was set me up to fail. And like if I got a B in a class, it was the greatest thing in the world. I was a CD student. It became like a mix. Like, hey, let's go. Let's smoke some marijuana. Let's drink, and then we're gonna pop the painkillers. And it kind of enhanced everything I was doing. I was like, oh, when I take these, I don't even need to drink as much. And then it just kept going and going and going. We had another roommate come in, and this gentleman was a character. He brought the harder stuff in. He started to bring in, the Oxycontin, oxycodone, Xanax, which I had never done before. And I never knew I had anxiety until I took Xanax for the first time. Wow. And I took it and I was like, holy crap, I can talk to any girl. I can do anything. I can go to any class. I can play any sport. I'm like, I can do whatever I want now. This is great. That little voice went away of you can't do this, or you're going to fail, or you're not good enough, whatever it is. And, that was the cocktail of doom. That was the Xanax and opiate cocktail. And people that drink and smoke weed and, do other and cocaine are suckers. Like, this stuff is so much better. It's the best. Then I started to realize the cost behind all this. It's expensive. Once you start building up some tolerance and a habit, I was working at an Outback Steakhouse. I would, make good money every night, and I couldn't even afford my habit at that time, And so we start realizing, hey, there's these stuff called pain clinics down in Florida. So let's go down to Florida and let's go to these pain clinics. So me and a couple people, we would drive down here. We go to the pain clinics, we get the MRIs, they tell us we have 90 slip disc and scoliosis, and our backs are screwed and we can't move, and we're screwed the rest of our life. And if we don't start this Oxycontin, we are going to be, immobile within a few years. So go in there, you get 150 Somas and 250 Xanax and 200 Adderall and 200 Oxycodone 30s or Oxycontin 80s. And
like $110.
Yeah, $150. Swipe the insurance. go back home. Yeah, that's when it went really dark. And that's when, then you want to make extra money. You're selling some, and then you run out of money. Then you're driving back to Florida. And, then we started really kind of going back and forth. It got bad quickly. That's when the addiction became more important than anything in the world. And that's when I stopped caring about human beings. I stopped caring about myself. It didn't matter if you're my friend. It didn't matter who you are. Like, if you turned around, I was stealing your stuff and helping you look for it. Mm-hmm. And I remember I robbed this kid, and for like nothing. It was stupid. It was like $30, like something so dumb. Mm-hmm. I want to say it was and then I stole a bunch of school books. Those are like gold in college. Yeah. Those school books are like $200 a piece. So I stole them and like traded them in, and he found out
to like the school. It's awesome.
Yeah, and they just trade him to the school bookstore. Yeah. He shows up to my house, and I'm blacked out on benzos and opiates, and he comes to my front door. Hits like him and like 5 guys, and I'm like, I'm gonna get my ass beat. So I call 911. I wait like 2 minutes. He's knocking on the door. They're banging on the windows. And I'm like, waiting. I'm like, all right, they should be here soon. And I come running out of my house with an axe in the front yard, waving it like full speed. I'm like, who wants this? You know what I mean? Just like swinging it in my drive. And they just start looking at me like an absolute psychopath. Cops pull up. What do they think? They're like, there's 5 kids kind of just sitting on the road staring at someone just wielding an axe. So they don't even bother them. They just arrest me, tackle me to the ground, take me to jail. Get charged with like disturbing the peace and who knows, a bunch of other stuff. And that was kind of like, I'd been in trouble. Like, I got caught selling weed in high school, and, did like some like outpatient rehabs and stuff like that. But I'd never like been in like a real jail. And where Coastal Carolina is actually a place called Conway, South Carolina. And it is a rough town, like not somewhere you want to go. Sorry if anybody's from Conway. This place is brutal. I go to jail there in Conway. I remember getting in there, I start detoxing, and I'm like, I feel like crap. So I remember asking my roommate, I'm like, what do I do? And he's like, hey, if you tie a sheet around your neck and tell them you're going to kill yourself, they'll put you in the psych place, and then they'll give you some meds. And I'm like, oh, sounds great. So I do that, and they put me in like the psych portion of the jail very quickly. That was an intense place. I'm sure a lot of people that have gone to the psych wards in the jails, and it's not fun. So I'm in the psych ward, and I'm freaking out. I'm coming off all these substances, and I go to see the judge, and the kid that came to my house was arrested. He was right next to me in line. So we start yelling at each other. Wow. And then the judge says like to be quiet. And I tell the judge, go fuck yourself. And I threw a chair at him. No. So he said, yeah, that's 30 days contempt of court. And put me in there. Like day 2, day 3 kind of come to. I got lucky. My stepfather's a lawyer, and he happened to know the magistrate down there. So they kind of came down and bailed me out. At that point, my parents knew something was wrong. They were like, you got to leave school. Like you can't stay here. Like this is bad. Everything you're doing is bad. And you don't look right. You don't look healthy. So I go back to Maryland, and I get back there, and all my friends are strung out. And people are paying $1, $1.50, $2 for a milligram of Oxycontin or oxycodone. And I'm like, this is like, there's no way. And that's when the heroin starts.
How old were you?
This time about 19.
Okay.
Yeah, this was junior year of college that I got pulled out. So yeah, 19 years old. I realized I can go to downtown DC or downtown Baltimore, and I, for the same $100 that would get me to feel okay for a day can now get me feel okay for 2 or 3 days. That's when the heroin started. So I started just kind of snorting it. I was hanging out in my basement, and this kid, I would give him money to go get us pills and some heroin or whatever, and come back. And he comes back and he's like, hey, I got these things called Dilaudid. And he's like, but you can't snort them. He's like, you have to shoot them up. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, let's do it.
Yeah, because I got clean during that whole transition. But like the whole transition was like Oxy 80s. Then it was Roxy's. Then like you couldn't get Oxy's. People only did Roxy's.
Yeah.
And then when Roxy's became $1 a milligram, people were selling Roxy for $30. People started doing Dilaudid, and like I don't know why, but like it doesn't hit you if you snort it. You have to shoot it.
Does nothing.
Yeah, so you have to shoot it. And it's like I was already clean. Like I got clean right before that.
Wait, so you got clean in 2008? Okay.
So I got clean in 2008.
Yeah.
So like right when I got clean, everyone started doing Dilaudid. And I remember like...
Yeah, that was like the peak of my addiction.
Feeling like I was like missing out. Like, oh no, like everyone's... Because I remember like trying to shoot up, and people would be like, get the fuck out of my car. Like no one was trying to shoot up. But then like when there was no other option...
That's what it was.
People were doing it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how it turns quick. So he comes to my house, and I'm not feeling well. And he's like, hey, if we take this needle, he's like, I'll use it, and then... I'll bleach it out a couple times in your basement, and it's fine. You can use it. You can't pass anything that way. I'm like, okay, no problem. So I remember closing my eyes and like putting my arm back, and first time getting shot up, and I was like, wow, this is how I want to feel forever. Every day for the rest of my life, I want to feel exactly how I felt for that 20-minute period. It's quick, but I'm like, I want to feel like this forever. We start going to Baltimore and to Washington, D.C., getting drugs. And that's when, the stealing starts, to get by, and you start just selling out everything. All your morals that you said you do, all the what ifs, that I never do this, I'll never do that, they all go out the window. I get fired from my job, and I'm waking up every day, and it's just, how do I get more? How do I get more? How do I get more? And I start doing anything and everything you can think of to get more. Kind of the end of the run, that was like a whole year period, but the end of it was my dad was out of town and my mom was out of town. I was supposed to watch my mom's house, and I was sneaking over to her house. I was stealing her jewelry. I would go to the pawn shop and pawn it, go down to Baltimore, go to DC, get
mom's jewelry?
Yeah, steal my mom's jewelry. Then I went in my dad's drawer. This is like a couple days before I kind of came down to Florida for the first time, but I go in my dad's drawer, and I knew that this was my grandparents' diamond ring, and they had both passed away. Take the diamond ring, pawn it. I got like $100 for it,
That's crazy.
It's crazy because I look back, the thing's got to be worth at least $5,000. You know what I mean? I get like $100. Whatever the pawn shop guy said went. So I steal that. My dad kind of says like, "Oh, where's the ring?" And of course, "Oh, it was one of the guys at the house. It wasn't me." Blah blah blah. But I go to my mom's house, and I'm kind of going through her jewelry box, and I see the stuff, and I see this watch. It's just like it was like a Timex, like a very regular looking watch, and I was like, I kind of like this. I'm gonna keep this. I'm gonna wear this one, put it on my wrist, and take her jewelry, go to the pawn shop, got high for a few days, and then I'm like, I gotta go sell this watch. I wake up one day, so I go in. The guy at the pawn shop's like, I can't take that thing. It's worth nothing. And I'm like, just give me $5 for it. Like, keep it for yourself. So he gives me $5 for it. Whew, this one's tough.
$5 for it.
$5. Yeah. Didn't even give me a pink slip. Nothing. Just took it for himself,
Cash,
I guess.
yeah.
So I scrounged up my $15 to go get a couple caps, get a couple bundles or a couple bags. I'm at my dad's, and I remember my mom calling me and saying, "Hey, Sam, I got a problem. Someone robbed us." I said, "Well, who?" She's like, "I don't know." She's like, "But they came in, they took a bunch of our jewelry." I always thought I was slick enough to just take enough that they wouldn't notice, but it became so much they did. The jewelry's taken, but that's insured, so that's no problem. But there's one thing that's really important that we're missing. And I said, "What's that?" And she said, "So my stepfather's son had committed suicide at the same age that I was at that time. Yeah, he was like 18, 19 years old. He was in college. When my stepfather went to identify his body, he had that watch on his wrist. I had pawned it for $5, like it was nothing." I just remember that one just like hitting me and being like, oh my God, like I just, took something that is probably one of the most meaningful objects in this man's life, and my stepfather's a great man. He really is. I sold it for $5, not even enough to get a bag of heroin, half a bag. I didn't know what to do at the time. So I remember I literally ran up in my red room. I grabbed my TV. I grabbed my computer, anything I had left, and I packed in my car. I went down to the same pawn shop. I sold it all, and I drove out to West Virginia. I had a buddy that was working in a ski resort out there, and I was like, I'm just going to go live in the mountains of West Virginia with him. Like, I can't go home. I can't face this.
Do they know it's you? Like,
you know how our parents are.
Yeah,
like, they know it's you, but they're not going to accuse you because, they don't have evidence.
Yeah.
Back then, this wasn't when Ring and all the cameras were out, and you could get away with anything. There was no cameras at the house. Now, there's a Ring in every house now. You can't do that anymore.
They were waiting for you to come say something.
Yeah, they want you to come clean. And now, now that I'm a father, it's like I think about that. I'm like, until you're a parent and you don't understand what your parents did for you and how much they loved you and what they did to bring you up and how much just, that they, like I'm sitting there holding my daughter who's 4 months old, and I'm like holding her, I'm like, my parents did this for me, and it's powerful to think about that. So I'm in the mountains of West Virginia, and 2-3 days in, I'm like sick, feel like crap. I'm at this time really never really detoxed before. Like I'd always found a way to get high. So, after 2 days of running out of drugs, and I'm trying to drink nonstop to make the pain go away, do everything I can't get it away. So finally my parents knew I was kind of missing. So I'm like, I got to go home. So I call my dad. I got a problem. I'm like, I can't stop doing drugs. I'm hooked on opiates. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to get me help.
It's so foreign to them, like the opiate dependency.
Yes.
They're like, oh, like, do you just need to stop? And like, as addicts, like, we know we need to go somewhere, and like, it's It's like this,
deeper.
it's this train that's coming. You're not going to just be able to stop it, you know?
Yeah, you're not.
And when you're dope sick, you kind of feel like you need the money. Like, be like a diabetic not having insulin. It's
exactly
like you're going to die if you don't have this.
You're going to die. Yeah, that's what you tell yourself. You tell yourself you are going to die if you do not have this. The obsession is so great. It's hard because it's so long ago, and I really try to remember that and have compassion for people that are using now, of like how I felt, because it's like when you're far removed, sometimes you forget. So I come back home, my parents take me to like they called a gentleman who was like a drug counselor for me, really nice guy. I go to like a local hospital. They didn't know about like treatment centers or rehabs or really anything like that. They just thought like the local stuff by us. And I go in there and I go to like, they put me in the psych unit, the psych ward, and that's where they detoxed at the time. You know, it was no nicotine, nothing. Strap on a nicotine patch, eat some clonidine, and there was no Suboxone, nothing like that, and maybe give you some Ativan and just keep you there. So they kept me there for like 5-6 days. For my parents coming to visit me there, and it was one of the saddest things ever. And they came to visit me. I remember my mom telling me, neither of my parents were addicts or alcoholics, but my mom's father and mother were really bad alcoholics. And my mom said, this is a horrible feeling for me. She's like, because I used to visit my father here and I would come see him here. Oh, no. And now I'm seeing you here. And it's crazy how like that turns. So they're like, hey, we got you in this place in Florida. We want you to go. At this time, I got nothing going on in my life. I'm like, let's go. Let's go down there. And
yeah, I think sometimes people have no idea how willing some people are, you know, because it's like sometimes when an addict is so like aggressive and crazy when they're using, you don't know that when you ask them if they want to get help, that they're like ready to go.
Ready to go. Yeah.
There's so many times where I hear stories of interventions and the parents are like, you're never going to get him to go.
No.
And then you go and you make him an offer and he's like, I'll go right now.
Yeah. You it's crazy. Sometimes you don't know until you bring it up.
You really have no idea.
Yeah, that's very true.
When it happened to me, I was like so against getting clean, but then when the intervention happened, I remember thinking like, why did this take so long?
Yeah. Why did they do this like now? Yeah. It's crazy to think I was so beat up. I had all that shame, guilt. I really had nothing going on in my life. At this point, my friends had kind of stopped talking to me. My family was so disappointed in me. My brother was like, I had no relationship with him. I was very willing, but that was not the end of, by any means, the end of the using. So I go down to Florida, go to this place called Florida House. And I show up like sober for the first time in my life. And I'm like, this is great. Like, I feel good. You know, start going to the gym, start eating right, start getting some weight back on. You go into these group therapy sessions, they're great. I'm learning a lot of stuff. You know, I'm learning about, you know, cognitive distortions and, you know, thoughts and, you know, just all kinds of stuff. I was a very easily influenced person. So I had these roommates come in and this guy's like, hey, I'm from here. He's like, I can get us some oxy. He's like, we can just bring them in one night, do them, blah, blah, blah. Without even like thinking about it. Like, I thought nothing of it. I'm like, yeah, that's great. We'll do a couple of oxys. I'm not going to get hooked on them, you know, do them for a few days. And he didn't end up getting them in, but like still that like, I was totally fine with that and didn't see any problem with that. So I stayed there I was there for a while. I was there for like 40, 50 days. They were an intense place at that time. They're very different now. They were like a TC. They ran like a therapeutic community. Wow. So it was like, there was a lot of like kind of shaming and they bring my family down for family weekend. They come down. They were like telling me stuff that really wasn't true. I'm in these sessions and they wanted me to do all this written work and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm not doing any writing work. Like I'm doing good. Like I feel great. I'm going to go to halfway after this. Everything's good. So they're like, you got to go. Like, you're out of here. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, you got to go. And I said, okay, well, I'll go with my family. And they said, no. I guess they had talked to my family. I don't know if they made the right decision or not, but they basically said like, we're going to kick Sam out of here. He's an arrogant, cocky prick. He's got to figure out on his own for the first time in his life because he's always fallen back on you guys and you guys are always taking care of him. I get kicked out of there and they basically said, you have two options. We can drop you off at the Salvation Army, or we can drop you off at the homeless shelter. And I'm like, well, which one has less rules? They're like, the homeless shelter. This is Broward Outreach Homeless Shelter. I'm like, cool, take me there. So before they left, like before they had this conversation with my parents, there was this little cafe there called JoJo's Cafe. And they gave us like, it's still there. Yeah, down in Deerfield. And they gave me this card. You could buy like cigarettes, Red Bull, like whatever. So I went in there and I dropped $200 on Newports and Red Bulls. And I was like, let's go to the homeless shelter. So I show up to the homeless shelter. When you got, you know, bag full of Red Bulls and cigarettes in a suitcase, people are like, oh, I'm everybody's best friend, you know? That lasted a few days. So you get to this homeless shelter and they do have like a program there, but you have to qualify for it. So basically you show up there, you got to leave every morning at 5 a.m. and you got to check in by 3 p.m. every day, 3 to 5 p.m., but you got to be out by 5 a.m. So
5 a.m. That's
5 a.m.
crazy.
Yeah. Out the door and aimlessly walk. She's supposed to go find a job, do whatever, unless you qualify for their program, which takes like a couple weeks to get into, and they have to have beds. I get there and, sleeping on a piece of metal with a fire, they call them fire blankets. And they're like, it's horrible. But, meet a couple buddies and we're all like, hey, we can start to get some money together. We can start robbing some Home Depot, some Lowe's. And they loved me because I had a clean ID. Yeah. So like no one had a clean ID down there, but I had a clean ID. When clean ID, what that meant is that you had not returned Walmart, Lowe's, Home Depot. You could return things like 3 times with an ID without a receipt. So we'd run into one Lowe's, steal a drill, steal this, steal that, and then go to the next Lowe's, return it. That was kind of our hustle. So for like a couple of weeks, that's what we were doing. We were just robbing Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, throwing drills over the side, anything you can think of. We were just running rampant. We were smoking crack and
staying at the homeless shelter?
Staying at the homeless shelter, yeah. At that moment, I started to have like what I call like little epiphany. So, we go out, maybe drink for the day, run out of money, and then I'd go back and everyone would sit outside. If you drive by, it's Blunt Road. You ever driven by there in Pompano? You can see everybody hanging out outside. They're all waiting to get in at 5 o'clock. And I would, usually go out in the morning, get back there at 2, 3, and I would just sit outside. I had my suitcase. I'd hide it in the bushes. I'd pull it back out, get my backpack. It was funny because I had a basic text, an NA basic text.
Wow.
Not a big book. I had a basic text. But I wouldn't read the basic text part. I would only read the stories.
Okay.
So I'd go to the back and I would just
read the stories?
Yeah, and read the stories.
Wow.
But I started to relate to them. And I remember reading them and be like, wow, this guy's like me, or this girl's like me. Same feelings, same life, same kind of stuff. Mind you, by the way, this entire time, my parents turned my cell phone off. I tried calling my mom and dad 100 times, my brother, anyone I knew, nobody would answer, nobody would talk to me. And it was that feeling of like total despair of like, I am alone in the world. There is nobody to call right now and I am on my own. That's like an eerie feeling when you feel truly alone, like there is nobody to call and there is nowhere to go. Mind you, I have great health insurance. I didn't know this at the time. A lot of kids go around here and swipe their insurance around. So I had GIHA.
Yeah, you had no idea.
No clue that I could have called any treatment center I wanted and gotten in and used my insurance card like a credit card and, done whatever. I could have called the nicest places in the country, gotten right in, had no idea, no clue. So just living in this homeless shelter I was there for almost a month. Florida House tells me I can get back in. I kept calling, finally like, all right, come back. Like, as long as you can pee clean. So, I just little cocaine, little alcohol, and, knew I would pee clean, no problem. So I go back to Florida House and I'm there for like 3 or 4 days. I start getting back into it, tell everyone I'm still sober, even though I've been drinking and smoking crack and doing God knows what the last month. One day we go out to the 101 Club, which is crazy. That's where I ended up getting sober later on. It's almost like a lot of foreshadowing. They have bagels in the morning. So they drive us over there on the bus. And I swear to you not, I eat 2 poppy seed bagels with cream cheese. And I come back that night and I happen to get a UA that night and I pee for opiates and I take a test. And at that point, I'm like, screw these people. I'm like, I did not get high. You guys are out of your mind. Even though I really did, but they hadn't caught me getting high.
They didn't catch you on that
particular substance. So I was going to take that to the grave.
Yeah, first.
I'm like, I want to go to a halfway house. So they take me to a halfway house called Royal Recovery in Delray Beach. I'm sober at this point, like I'm not on substances. Get a couple weeks. They were like a really strict program. The gentleman that ran it ran a really good program. It was the best halfway house I'd ever been to in my life. It was one really tight. You had to do 90 and 90. You had to have a sponsor. You had to be on top of your stuff. I'm walking in the office one day and I see a sign that says, join the anti-fraud task force. Call this number. I'm like, I need a job. I go into this place and it's like a few guys. When I walk in though, I'm like, oh, what are we doing here? And they said, oh, we're doing timeshare fraud recovery. You're part of this anti-fraud task force. You're going to get this money back for these people that were scammed by these timeshare scams. I had no clue what the timeshare scams were in Florida. That was like a huge thing. So I think I'm going to get all these people their money back and I'm a hero. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to feel great. This is a great job. I'm going to, I can make $1,000 a week. This is awesome. I start calling these people and I start, we had like we would call them and kind of get them to agree. And then we had a guy that would do sort of like auditing, look through it. And then he would get them credits on the credit card and they would get their money back.
Wow.
Little did I know it was temporary credits. So they would get them, if you dispute anything on your credit card now, you get a temporary credit and it takes, sometimes 30, 60, 90 days to fall off. You don't really ever win. Maybe if it's true fraud, you do. So we're disputing all these charges. Then we're charging people 50% of what they disputed and taking their money, recharging them again for it. And then the temporary credits are falling off and they're all calling us angry, blah, blah, blah.
Typical Florida scam.
Yep, total scam. And Little did I know, on the other side of the office, they were selling them, and then we were recovering the money.
Wow.
I mean, talk about like a total scam. You know, everyone in the office is using, they're all getting high, and eventually I'm just like, why am I here? So I leave. There's a couple of people I became friends with there, and I go move in with one of them, and within an hour, I'm back full run. You know, I'm like, call my boss, like, give me the opiates, you know what I mean? Give me give me the oxys. They were so easy to find down here. They were everywhere. I'd never seen anything like it, and they were cheaper. Yeah. What they call us in Maryland. And I'm just on the run, and I'm starting the Xanax, I'm starting oxys, all kinds of stuff. I'm just living a really shitty life, and I'm feeling way worse about myself because now I'm robbing people for a living. I just got to keep doing more and more high to black out, you know, they say in the big book to blot out the intolerable consciousness of our situations. What it was. It's blotting out an intolerable consciousness. I'll tell you about my last 48 hours. This is the best part. The last 48 hours using for me were total insanity. I pay for this guy to go to a doctor, and he gets all the same stuff we used to go to in Florida. And he comes back, and this guy's name was Mike. We'll call him Big Mike. He was the biggest human I've ever seen in my entire life. This guy was probably 6'10", and I'm pretty tall. I'm 6'5", but this guy's 6'10". He probably weighed 450 pounds. He was an absolute monster. And this guy, I gave him money. He comes back. He's like, hey, I can't give you the opiates, but I'm going to give you all the Xanax. And I'm like, are you serious? I just gave you all this money, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. I'm going to start eating the Xanax. So I'm like, you know, trying to trade some, sell some, get some. So I go into work that day. I convinced this guy, I had this old man that, God bless him, I would just hustle him every week. He was like my lick. Like if I needed money, I'd call him and be something. So I promised him that he had this land. I already sold 3 of his timeshares, and he had this land in Tennessee. And I told him, oh, I got a buyer that loves land and we'll sell it. I offered him, you know, $50,000 more than it was worth. Sold this land to him, except this time, instead of going through the company, now not only am I going to scam this guy, I'm scamming my scamming company. So I'm telling him, I said, hey, here's what you're going to do. You're going to mail me a check to my house. We're going to do this on the side, because if not, they're going to charge you more. It's going to be commission. This is what you want to do. Robert Bowman was this gentleman's name. Oh, wow. I'll never forget it. He sends me a check for $4,000, which back then was like, I was the richest man on earth. You know what I mean? Oh my God, I can run.
He made it out to your name?
Made it out to my name. Wow. Convinced him. This guy, this guy's like senile. Guy. Yeah, he's like 80 years old. He's like probably got dementia. Call him, Rob, got it. I'm gonna get the deal done. This is where the divine stuff starts to kick in. So I go to the bank that morning to cash the check. And it turns out my boss's, the scammer guy's wife, was the teller at the bank. I had never met her before. She had seen me because she had like come in the office. She had noticed me. I didn't notice it was her. So I walk into, it was a Wachovia then, and I cash this check. She calls my boss and says, hey, one of your guys just came in here and cashed a $4,000 check, and it wasn't from you. She's like, I think he's stealing from the company. Can you imagine? I think about that. That I happened to go to that bank at that time with that teller, and it happens to be this guy's wife in Delray, which is a pretty big town, a big city. And it happens to be the branch right by my house, right by the apartment I was renting. And that's like one of those things, like if that didn't happen, the rest of this doesn't happen. And I don't know where I am today. So I go back in the office, I'm all lit up this time. I get out, I got all the stuff I need. G's, I go out to, the little Haiti area. I buy every drug I can. And I'm like, I'm ready to sell. I'm ready to scam people. I'm all jacked up. I walk in, and the second I open the door, my boss already knew what time it was because he had called the guy, Robert Bowman, and found out about this. He knew that was like my file. As I open the door, I get clocked right in the face. This guy just drops me right on the floor of the office, like boom, like I'm in a total, like you see a video with like a blindside shot. Like I wish I could have a camera and watch it. I mean, and this guy was like a shorter, kind of bigger, thicker guy. So he must have hit me with like one of these like upper shots, like right into the chin. I'm down for the count. I mean, that's one of the true times in my life I can say I've been true knocked out cold. Like I was out cold, like, like black. Like I walk in and you don't even feel the pain. You just wake up and you're like, what just happened? And he ran my pockets, blah, blah. Before I had walked in, I had a laptop, and I'd taken the laptop, I had put $2,000 in it, and I had a feeling that he might know, not because of I just was like, I don't want him to say where did you get this money from? So, and I couldn't leave it in my apartment because my roommate's a vicious crack smoker. So I hide it in the bushes by Burger King. So he knocks me out, runs my pockets. Mind you, I have it all in cash. He gets like $1,000 of it. Some reason he didn't get the other $1,000 was in the other pocket. He tells me, get the fuck out, you're fired. Like, I know what you did. Don't come back here. So I walk back out and I'm like, fuck. I'm like, well, I lost $1,000, not the end of the world. And I got $3,000. This can last me for a decent time. And, I'll find another job, probably about 1:00 in the afternoon now. So I go back to the Burger King and homeless guys had stolen. I seen them running off with my laptop and the $2,000 in it.
No.
And I'm like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me. So now I'm down to $1,000. Well, let's go drink and celebrate. At least I got $1,000, So I start going into bars and I'm lit up on benzos, and it starts to get real hazy for me here. But I remember going into like a couple of these bars in Delray, and I remember like walking in, like ordering drinks, and I remember like 2 bars, the manager came like, sir, you got to leave. Like, you can't be here. Like, you are whacked out. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I just want a few drinks. So I leave this bar, leave that bar, probably 5, 6 o'clock now at night. I go back to the house, and my roommate was a really bad crack smoker, and he had been out the whole night before. And I knew that because when I left, he wasn't home yet. So I walk back in. He's a furious crack smoker. His wife is a terrible alcoholic, or a girlfriend. And I walk back in, and when I tell you empty, I've never seen a place more empty in my entire life. So this guy had been going back and forth from the house from the time I left and took every single thing you can imagine out of the house. This man took the cupboards, the spoons, the cups. I mean, everything you can think of. He took all my clothes, all my shoes, my bed. I slept on a mattress with a little TV. It took the little TV, the mattress, my phone chargers.
The mattress is gone?
Oh, the mattress took everything. I mean, I'm talking, it looked like someone moved out and then stripped it. Like it was like, it looked like it was prepped for construction. Like that's where it was. It was insane. Like you could tell too, he was digging for rocks because the baseboards were all cracked out. His bed's gone. So I think he was probably having his dealer come there and loading up his truck and just going on back and forth, back and forth. I mean, there was not one single item left in that house. All it was his girlfriend, I guess he took her clothes, now that I think about it, I don't know, was literally butt naked, lying on the middle of the floor, clenching something. And I'm like, I walk in and I'm like, you have to be fucking kidding me. Like I've already gotten robbed once today. I got knocked out cold, and now all my stuff's gone. Everything that, all this cool stuff, my shoes and, I thought this was like my whole world was gone. And this guy's out smoking crack and his girlfriend's out butt naked on the floor. So I walk in and I guess they had gotten in a fight. We actually went to visit these two later, and they are sober today, which is great.
Wow, that's sick.
I pry open her hand and it's her car keys. So I guess they had been fighting, and he was trying to take the car, and she had been like gripping it, and he ended up just saying like, it's not worth it.
Wow.
So she's out cold at this time, and I'm like, well, you stole my shit, motherfucker. I'm stealing your car. So I grab the keys out, doesn't even budge. She's out cold by then. I guess they've been fighting, and I steal her car. And I got $1,000 left, and I got no job, and I got nowhere to live, and I need to make some money. So what does any good addict do?
You sold the car.
He goes to the casino.
Oh, there you go. You thought of gambling?
Yep. That was my bright idea.
Oh my God.
So I called Big Mike, 6'9", 450-pound Mike, and I'm like, Mike, let's go get some drugs. Let's go down to the Hard Rock. I got $1,000. Let's see what we can do with it. So we drive down to the Hard Rock, and God, this has never happened sober. I take this $1,000 and I turn it into about $25,000.
Really?
I could not tell you what I played, how I did it. I don't know if it was slots, black. I don't even remember. I just know that I went on the tear of a lifetime.
What?
Not once have I gambled sober and this happened, but of course when I'm using it happens. And I turned $1,000 into $25,000. And we were out till 7, 8 in the morning, having a blast. Thought it was the greatest thing ever. I'm on the way back to go drop Mike off. He's staying at a hotel with his girlfriend, and Mike looks over at me. He's in the passenger seat. I'm like, all right, have a good night. Go to dab him up. And he's like, looks at me and he's like, you're not keeping that, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you're not keeping that. Wham!
It takes the money?
Locks me back on the seat, pulls my seat back. Have you ever seen the video that's like the joke video of the girl who like pretends to get choked out? Yeah. Like one of those positions.
What?
And seatbelts me, locks me down, reaches over, starts pulling all the cash out. There's money flying everywhere. He's grabbing it. He's like, I'm sorry. This guy was like a psycho. He's like, I'm sorry. I have to do this. He's an addict. I get it now. Forgive him now. But at the time he's just ripping stuff out of my pockets, taking my wallet, grabbing everything. And he's just screaming, I'm sorry, at the top of his lungs. This guy's got like long hair down to his back. He looks like a maniac, looks like a bridge troll. And he's just I'm totally powerless. Like this guy he'll kill me. So, he steals everything, takes it all.
God.
Maybe left me with $1,000 out of the $25,000. So I'm back to my 1,000 again. Goes inside his hotel, It's like 7 a.m. We're down in Hollywood. I remember like popping my seat back up, and I honestly like for the first time I can say like I felt the devil come into me, and I was like, I'm gonna murder him. I'm gonna kill this guy. That's how I'm gonna get my revenge. Like I literally, that was my best thinking of where it got me at that point, to where like, and I'm a very nice person. I'm a pacifist. If I find bugs in my house, my wife hates me to this. I literally will catch them in a glass and free them. Like I do not hurt people. It's not my thing. But in my mind, I'm going to kill him. That's my plan. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to get my money back, and he's going to get revenge for what he did to me. I'm on Xanax. I'm on oxycodone. I'm smoking meth. I'm smoking crack, snorting cocaine. I'm eating Adderall. I'm drinking. What's the first idea of when you want to kill someone? Let's get a dog. Let's get a pit bull.
You got a dog? Not a gun?
Nope.
Or a knife?
Dog. We're going for a dog. So I go to Broward.
You bought a dog? Did you get a dog from the Humane Society?
So I drive to the Humane Society, and I said, I'm going to get a pit bull.
What?
And this is like, I remember sitting out front, and I'm shooting up stuff, and I'm outside, and I'm like waiting for them to open. I'm waiting until 9 o'clock. I'm like, they open. I'm going to get the 2 most vicious dogs in there, and I'm going to fucking sick them on them, and then I'm going to steal my money back.
You like only have poodles.
Yeah, I walk in there. They had some pretty badass
like
dogs.
Cats.
This was like the Broward, like Humane Society. So I go in there, and I'm walking around, and I remember walking up to the lady. She's like, "You okay, sir?" And I'm like, "What's your meanest dog?" She's like, "What? Who is this sociopath?" Like lit out of my mind. So I'm like, "I need your 2 meanest dogs." And she like starts like asking me some questions. And about 5 minutes, she's like, "Sir, I need to ask you to leave, or I'm going to call the police." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "You don't want to save these dogs?" And I started to try to turn it on her. Like, why would you not want to save the animals? And like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're supposed to be nice, and about kicks me out of there. So like, all right, that didn't work. So what am I going to do next? Let's go to Target and let's see what they got. I feel like we can find some weapons there. So I go over to Target in Hollywood. Mind you, I have a stolen car, and I walk in, and I'm walking through. And you know, if any of you have ever eaten a lot of Xanax, you want to steal everything.
Yeah.
I have like $1,000, maybe $1,200 in my pocket, but I got to steal everything because I can't spend it. It's the last of my money. So remember, mind you, all my clothes got stolen, so I need some new clothes. So this is when LeBron James was playing for the Heat. I hate LeBron James. I'm a big sports fan. Anyone knows I'm not a fan of him, but I wanted his jersey that day. So I go into Target, I grab one of those fake LeBron James Heat jerseys.
That's how high you were. You wanted a
Oh
LeBron
yeah.
James.
I grabbed the Target sneakers. Target sneakers are great. I grab some like 6 pairs of basketball shorts. I'm putting them over layer by layer. God, I wish I could see the video of when I did this in Target. And then I go into the hunting section, and I grab a bow and arrow and put it down my back. And in my mind, I'm like, bow and arrow. I'm like, I can knock on this guy's door. As soon as he opens it, I'll shoot it. If his girl opens it, I'll shoot her in the leg, because I'm not going to kill her. But then I'll shoot him with the bow and arrow, and then I'll steal my money back. Great way to kill somebody, you know? Insanity. I grab not like a normal knife. I go into like the cooking section and take like a kitchen knife, put it in my pants, and then I grab a thing of pepper spray. I'm like, oh, this is better. Pepper spray. Yeah, get some pepper spray. So I got a bow and arrow, pepper spray, a big kitchen knife, a LeBron James jersey, like 6 pairs of basketball shorts, the Target sneakers, and I think a Target hat. And I'm like, I'm not paying for this shit. So I'm putting it on, and I'm walking out of Target, and I get out. I don't know how nobody there noticed that and didn't say you were stealing, but I get out of Target like noon on like a Tuesday or Wednesday, like psycho, shot out on every substance known to man, just walking into Target, stealing stuff.
Welcome to the Genesis House, powered by the United Recovery Project, located in sunny South Florida. We offer drug and alcohol addiction treatment, as well as a major focus on dual diagnosis. Our addiction therapy programs include behavioral therapy, 12-step facilitation, psychotherapy, life skills training, and more. At our facility, you can expect a low client-to-staff ratio, daily group therapy, weekly one-on-one therapy sessions, and luxury amenities such as volleyball, basketball, pool, chiropractor, personal trainer, yoga, massage therapy, and more. Contact the United Recovery Project today, and let's create a better tomorrow.
I'm walking out and there was this show, and I used to watch this show, Broward County Police Women. It was like a pretty popular show back then.
Really popular.
Yeah, it was like all over. What was it, True TV or Crime TV or whatever?
True TV used to be the best.
The best.
It would be like car chases.
Yes, you turn it on,
like,
it's just action.
It was like rated R ridiculousness.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what it was. So I'm walking out. This is another one of those God moments I'll call insane, good but bad luck. And I notice one of the ladies from the shows, and I love the show. It was the Spanish lady with like the long brown hair. She's walking into Target, and I'm like coming out like this way out of the exit, and I look to my right, and I'm like, and I like kind of just stop, and I'm high on my mind. Mind you, I have a bow and arrow with arrows sticking out of my neck like Robin Hood. I have a butcher knife in my pants, and all this stuff on, and I'm looking at her, and I'm like, hey, lady. I'm like, you're the lady from TV. Like, you're famous. I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, I love you. And she just stops and like looks at me and she's like, are you shoplifting? Like, cause I'm just like packed with stuff. And I'm like, she's like, get on the ground, get on the ground. And I'm like, oh my God. Pulls her gun on me, puts me on the ground, comes over, starts emptying my pockets, grabs the rest of my money out, takes my knife and my bow and arrow. The Target employees all come out. She's like, you're going to jail for shoplifting. They said, do you have a car? I said, no. So thank God my drugs were hidden in the car. So I get arrested by the lady on the show. Not because they caught me, but because I was screaming at her, like wanting to have a conversation with her, like thought that was totally fine. So then now I go to Broward jail, which had some like really weird moments in that jail. So I go in and I'm in a holding cell with a guy who tells me he's a pastor. He's like my age. He has two black eyes, but he's like preaching the whole time and like saying all stuff about God and you'll be forgiven and like really interesting because I'm like, he's like my age, he's like a young kid. So they transport me to the one downtown in like downtown Fort Lauderdale. And I get there and I'm so sick and I'm dying. And they don't really give you anything to help you. Like now they kind of understand opiate addiction more. And back then they didn't. Tie a sheet on my neck, they come in 4 deep, put me in, transfer me to the Run Ralph Blunt Road right next to the homeless shelter. It's like the psych jail. So I'm in the psych jail. And I remember this really sweet nurse who like kind of like knew I was an addict and like took to me and like gave me some clonidine, like make sure my blood pressure was good. Like she really kind of like looked out for me for like, you know, the week or so I was there, 5-6 days. And I started to come out of like the blackout and it was petty theft was my charge. My bond was $500. Now I had $1,200 in my pocket. I didn't spend my money. They had it in the jail. So I like come to and like all of a sudden it's epiphany of like, oh crap, I got $1,200. I can bond myself out. So I start saying, go through my belongings, like bond me out, like let me bond myself out. They go through, I get the $500, I bond out. I remember walking out of the jail and you all can probably remember this real well. I had shorts on and I had the huge cigarette burn like right here. And I'm very sick as an opiate addict. We're going to get graphic here, guys. I'm sorry, but you shit your pants. So I'm walking down the steps after getting out of Broward jail and I shit my pants and I walk back into the jail, go back to the security, tell them I have to use their bathroom. And I remember literally taking my underwear off and like throwing it behind the toilet and like putting these shorts back on with like a giant hole. My junk's probably hanging out everywhere. I'm like walking down the stairs and I walk up to the first people I see. It was some lady who just got released from jail and her husband. I'm like, I will pay you guys $200 to drive me around. Mind you, I'm not from here, so I don't know where I'm going. I have no cell phone. Take me to every Target in this area. Help me find the car because I got to get the car back now. Because now I've been missing for 5 days. I got a stolen car. I had the keys. Yeah, they were in my pocket. And I knew I had a bunch of drugs in the car too. So they drive me around. We can't find it. Cannot find it. We must have gone to 20 Targets.
A bunch of nice people. They're like,
yeah.
Sure.
They took me to KFC, got me some chicken, like blah, blah. I was like, I'll give you another 100. And
He's a generous guy.
Yeah, right? Nice guy. Finally, I go back to the jail again. And I'm like, I wait the next day. We slept in their car, drank a bunch of booze that night. I go back to the jail the next day and I'm like, hey, I need my arrest report. Like, I got to know where I got arrested. So they gave it to me. I'm like, oh, it's this Target down in Hollywood. So I drive all the way down to Hollywood. I get the stolen car back. I remember opening it. I didn't have any opiates this time, but had a huge bottle of Xanax. And I just remember popping a handful of them. I drive back to the apartment where my two friends lived. And by this time he had been kind of off his crack run again. I walk back in, you motherfucker, you stole my girl's car. And blah, and I'm sorry, here's $500, my last 500, whatever, just take it.
Gave your last 500?
Gave my last 500, yeah. And
you're a good man.
At this time I was like, I gotta get help. Like I knew that like this was like bad. So this girl who was actually sober, who's like, I call it like literally kind of like one of my guardian angels at the time, who was actually doing really well now. I'm friends with her on Facebook, see her all the time, has 3 kids, lives up in New York. And she somehow convinced me at the time to like go to get help. I was sitting on the back porch, smoking a cigarette, talking with my buddy. He's like, you need help. Mind you, this guy just stole everything at the housing. And he's like, you got to get help, dude. He's
telling the cohorts, it's like, yo, you need to go to treatment.
You got to go to treatment. You're crazy, man. You stole my girl's car. Like, you're out of control. I call my mom. My parents still, in their mind, I'm sober and doing really well. I'm talking to her, and I remember her being like, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm good. And she's like,
she could hear it in your voice.
No, you're not. And she had seen my mugshot too. Nice. She knew I got arrested. She knew that I was struggling and I was in bad shape. I remember her just crying to me and be like, you're going to die. Like, I'm going to lose you. And I had that like, kind of like that white light, like epiphany of like, this can't be my life. Like, this is what you were meant to be. Like, this is what you were meant to do. This girl that I was seeing at the time, I don't know what she was doing with me sober, who knows, but she's like, hey, I'll drive you to detox. She's like, I'll take you in there. So I go back to detox, and I'm in detox, and I'm like day 3, day 4 in. This other lady who's like guardian angel number 2, her name is Mary Curtis. She's actually passed away. She ended up being my therapist, and then actually ended up working for me as a therapist later on. A little Irish lady. She comes in. The detox is like, what are you gonna do after this? I'm going back to the Royal Recovery, back to halfway. I was, going to go back to the job, and everything was fine. She comes in. She starts telling me about like, hey, there's this really nice treatment center that you should go to. This was Ocean Breeze, or BRT counseling was the time. And like, it's brand new.
So you went there when it's BRT. That's crazy.
Yeah, I was like client number like 15 or 16.
Wow.
So she starts telling me about this program, and you should come here. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, dude, I need to go like back to school. Like, I need to get a real job. Like, you're crazy. Like, telling her.
I already went into treatment.
Yeah. What are you talking about? I was like, I need, to get my girlfriend back. Like, I got to make amends to some of my friends. Like, I got to, make money. I got to go to college. And she sat there, and I just gave her every line for probably 2 hours and just listened. Did not speak, just listened to me speak total nonsense. And at the end of it, she said, I want to show you something. And I was like, okay. She pulls out a quote, and I have it in my house today. And it turns out it was actually my grandmother's favorite quote. And it's one of really the founders of AA. It was a quote by Carl Jung. And it's, he who looks outside dreams, and he who looks within awakens. And she said that to me. And she said, everything that you just said is something outside of yourself.
Wow.
All you talked about is the outside world. And you think, and your craziness and your obsession is that if you fix the outside world, that your inside world's going to change. That's not the way it works, Sam. She's like, until you fix the inside and do the inside job, she's like, your outer world will never change. She goes, we got to dig in on the inside. For some reason, it just hit me. I was like, I'll go. I was like, I'll go. Yeah, you have those just like moments of clarity. It made sense. Went to BRT counseling. I was client number 15. I was so sick coming off of all those substances, 300 or 400 Xanax a week, like no joke. Like, it was disgusting now that I think about it. And I didn't sleep for like a month. I was a wreck, dude. I couldn't eat anything. My first sponsor worked there, and I remember him just telling me like, you're going to be all right for 5 minutes. Like, get by for 5 minutes, 5 minutes, just get through 5 minutes, just get through 5 minutes. That's all he would say to me all day. He's like, you made it 5 minutes? He's like, good, you got 5 more. That's all he would say to me all day. I stayed there for like 66 days, and I started to feel better. I started to work on myself, started to do the steps. I didn't even know what steps were. Like, I'd been to AA meetings, heard about them, but I didn't know what they were. But I started like really committing to like the program, and that line stuck with me of like, I got to change the inside. And I stuck with it. A miracle started to happen. And I remember, like day 60 in there, and a lot of kids came in and out. And I remember sitting in a circle, and for the first time, they did like a coin out, and everybody said, they're like, we all want you to pick one person in here you think's going to be sober. And almost every person pointed at me and said, Sam's going to stay sober. Wow. Sam's going to stay sober. And I was like, why? Like, why do they think I'm going to stay sober? They were right. Because a lot of those kids are like dead today, which is crazy to think about, or they're still getting high, who knows where they are. I stayed there, and then I went to a place called Solution Sober Living. They had like an aftercare program, and one gentleman there at the time said to me, he's like, you're not going there. He's like, you're going to this place that's like hardcore AA 12-step. It's right behind the 101 Club where I ate those poppy seed bagels. Little did I know, there's like so much foreshadowing. I went to this place called Solution Sober Living. I show up there. My parents come down to town to give me $200, and they said, after this, you're on your own. You got to figure it out. I show up there, and this little guy with this white furry chest comes out with white hair. His name's Joe Bear. He walks out, and he's like, are you ready to change? Are you ready to become a man? And he like asked me that, and I'm like, yeah, wow. I am. I said, I'm ready to make the change. And it was strict, man. We lived in like a dorm room. It was like military ran. It was like wake up at 7 a.m., mow the lawn, scrub the baseboards, like that kind of place. But it taught me how to like be responsible and be held accountable for like the first time in my life. So I stay there, following the rules. I'm doing everything. I get a sponsor, start doing step work. I got a clubhouse down the street. I'm going to 2-3 meetings a day. I get a job, great job. You know, it's like the perfect job at the time. I was making like $400 a week. It was enough to pay my rent, go out to dinner once a week with the guys, get some cigarettes, and like that's all I needed.
I always tell people, it's like, dude, your job needs to be like the last thing you think about. It needs to be like something you do to just get money to go and eat food. That's it. If you're thinking about your job when you first get clean, it's such a distraction.
You have no chance.
It's like, it's the worst thing ever. When I talk to someone and all they're doing is telling me about their job, I'm like, this is never going to work.
You have no chance.
Never going to work.
Yeah, I tell people that too today. Like, if you're freshly sober, you should not work anywhere that you're making more than $1,000 a week. If you're making more than $1,000 a week, go somewhere else.
Scoop ice cream, make pizza.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's all you need. That's all you need. And it's like, obviously you need a job. You need enough to get by. But in
And people don't understand. It's like when you deprive yourself of the instant gratification and to get the inside right, when you do get to that level of where you can handle a job, you're going to handle it so much better. It's so crazy. It's like trying to do algebra 2. You can't even add. It's like, but just wait till you learn how to add.
Yeah.
Algebra 2 is going to be
once you learn how to add, it's going to be no problem.
Yeah, but it's like, dude, it's
a good analogy.
like you got to go slow, bro. It's like, what the fuck? And like, dude, people, they get clean, they get a little service commitment, and like they just focus on work, and bro, they never focus on the steps. They never get a sponsor. And you know what? They might be able to stay clean, but they never live their dreams.
No,
I can tell you that much is that I know people that go to meetings, have maybe a sponsor by name, they never work the steps, and they might have an okay life, right? But I can tell you that they're not living a dream life.
They don't. No.
And some people dream of traveling the world. Some people dream of being a painter. Some people dream about like, you know, all sorts of crazy things. But it's like, I truly believe that when I do my step work, it's what pushes me into a state of anything is possible.
Yes.
When you do the steps, it asks you about like, what type of person do you want to be? What type of son do you want to be?
Yeah.
What type of life do you want to be? Like all these things. And like, if you don't do that type of work, I always say like, you'll get by, but you won't get ahead.
You won't get ahead. No, you're right. Yeah. You want a job making $1,000 or less in a week. If you're making more than that, quit it. Go somewhere else, because it keeps that level of humility in you, which you need in the beginning. You need to stay humble. You need to stay grounded. Your work is just a means to get by in the beginning. That's what it is. That first year, it's the means to get by. And your focus needs to be your program, your relationships that you build in the program, your sober living. So I'm at this sober living again. I stayed there for 11 months. I took all the suggestions. You know, not all of them are in our books, but I listened to people that had been through it before. And I just said, you know what, I'm going to do everything you guys tell me to do. Yeah. And I really did.
And you study the greats. It's like, dude, you just study the people that have years and years clean, bro. It's like the same thing.
Follow what they do.
You know, I always tell people, it's like, dude, you don't understand the power in going slow. Because my whole life I wanted to go fast. My whole life I wanted to speed through everything.
We live in the fast lane.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, bro, I didn't want to wait till I turned 16 to drive. I was driving when I was like 11. Yeah. You know, I didn't want to wait to be 21 to drink. I was drinking when I was like 10. You know, my whole life.
When I was 12 years
exactly.
Old,
I was always. And it's like I had to learn how much I could gain in life by going slow.
Yeah, exact same story. You know, and you hear that, you know, now I know the new people coming in or just coming in, like they look at us and like, oh, these guys got, you know, over a decade clean, and this is all this stuff.
Everything, have all these things.
You didn't see the beginning.
And not just that, it's like, bro, I was so happy when I was broke. Like being broke and being 100% involved in the program taught me how to handle and believe that I could do anything. So it's like,
I remember you because I was an alumni at BRT, and I would go back there and you were a tech there.
Yeah. And it's like, dude, I was as happy.
Super. You were super nice, super happy. Yeah, I remember you.
There's kids that I still talk to would always tell me like, dude, Bryan was just always there talking about the 12 steps.
Well, I tell people a crazy thing now, because once life gets up and you have business and you have a family and you have, you know, people, friends and accountability, like, tell me sometimes you don't wish you could go back to those halfway days.
Oh, bro, it's the best days of my life, dude.
They were amazing.
My first couple years clean, when I only had enough money for cigarettes, bro, I used to pawn my golf clubs to take my girl to dinner because I was embarrassed that I didn't have enough money and we had plans. There was times where I knew that my car would decline at the tip for dinner. Sometimes it was so embarrassing. There was times where I went
your golf clubs for dinner.
I would pawn them. I didn't even golf. I just had these golf clubs. But I remember there's times where I would drive to her house. She'd be like, don't you have to leave because you have work in the morning? Like, you live all the way down there? And I'd be like, I don't have gas money to get home. And like, dude, she used to let me borrow like $10, $15. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and I still had 3 years clean, 4 years clean. Yeah, I was still young. I don't remember being sad.
No.
Like, I was so happy.
That was like, I felt like those days, like those halfway days, and then, you know, being in the half house, then I moved into a house with a bunch of guys, and we lived together for like 5-6 years, and we were all in recovery. Brotherhood. Those were the best. Those were the best days. And I didn't make a lot of money. I didn't have anything special, but we were so tight, and I got to kind of really relive that like college experience of like true brotherhood and have this program.
I tell people all the time, like, getting clean in the 12-step program is college for a lot of us.
It is.
We didn't have college. We didn't have like that college experience. Like, bro, getting clean was like my graduating class.
It was so fun. I mean, so that, you know, the first year I was really dug in. You know, I really dug into the steps, doing, you know, the first step in there. I remember, so my third step, I'm with my sponsor, and we go to Starbucks. All of a sudden, he's like, get on your knees. I'm like, what do you mean? Get on your knees right now and say the third step prayer. I'm like, dude, there's people, I don't give a shit. Get on your knees. And I'm like, oh, he's like, I'll get on them with you. And I say the third step prayer. I get up, and he's like, don't ever be embarrassed to have faith in a higher power, ever, in front of anybody. And I was like, I thought people thought I was crazy and stuff like that. And I stood up, and I remember we were sitting back outside, and someone came up to me. They're like, are you in recovery? And they started asking me questions about it. They're like, oh, okay. They're like, yeah, I have a problem with alcohol. And I remember like giving this person help. And I was like amazed, cool. Like just because I did this stupid thing that embarrassed the crap out of me. But yeah, I really dug in. I dug into that 4-step right away. I remember I spent hours each night with my headphones on, writing in this dormitory in the sober living, getting that 4-step done, putting everything on paper that I had done, sharing it, didn't leave anything out, really wrote down my entire life story. It's funny because at the time we're so embarrassed and nervous, but now I sit on a podcast or I sit in front of 1,000 people and I say all that stuff that I wrote down like it's nothing. You know what I mean? But it was wild because at the time it was so hard to get that out.
And I think a lot of people, when they get clean, they have this idea of like, let's just not talk about that stuff. That was a long time ago or whatever.
I was using it, doesn't matter.
Yeah, and
it does.
Trauma doesn't go away.
No.
The only thing that you can do with it, become friends with it in some weird way. It's like the only way that you can get over something, put it in front of you and then put it away, and then put it in front of you and put it away. And then when it gets brought up, it doesn't bother you because you've already done that. You've desensitized yourself to it, you know?
I'm in here, and you know, again, people tell me don't get in a relationship, which I listened. And I don't, I've seen plenty of people that do get in relationships and it does work out. I don't have like a personal judgment in it. If you want to read it, we actually just did it in my step study the other night, talked about the whole relationship part.
You know, it's
follow what the book says.
I always tell people it's like running a marathon.
Yep.
And then being in a relationship, like running a marathon, no water.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
you can still, you might finish.
Do it.
It's just gonna be a little harder.
It's gonna be a lot harder, you know. So it's like,
I tell people, you know, like it's like a sports bet. Like, okay, you know, you can win a straight bet. You bet on one team, but you're in a relationship. It's like winning a parlay. You got to win 2 bets now. Yeah,
it's true.
It's not easy. You could hit. But. It lessens your odds. So I remember getting into step 6 and 7, which was big for me, digging in and looking at like, what was my defects of character? Like, what was I? And I was a liar. I was a cheater. I was scared and full of fear. I was dishonest. And when I say dishonest, I don't just mean like, hey, Brian, did you eat a ham sandwich? You told me you ate a peanut butter. I meant dishonest with myself. Like I lied to myself all the time. Like I told myself grandiose things and then I told myself negative things. So it was both sides of it. Like I told myself, oh, you're not good enough. You're never going to be able to do this. You're not smart enough. You're not strong enough. You're not whatever it was. And then I also would tell myself, you know, things that are like, oh, you're the best. You're this, you're that. And it was like, I had to find that middle ground.
There's like the self-limiting beliefs, and then it's like we also gas ourselves up beyond reality, really and like humility is like living in the middle. You know?
The middle. Yep.
And not like, you know, I used to walk into a room and instantly feel better than or less than everybody. And like until I did 6 and 7, I didn't feel equal.
Yes, never.
And it's like I never felt like connection with people, even before drugs. Like I always had friends, but I never felt connected.
Never.
Even with my family. I remember my family would say I love you, and like I just couldn't feel it.
Like
I never felt anything.
Yeah.
And then it's like, dude, you do 6 and 7 and you let go of your ego a little bit, and then you grab onto your humanness and you start to feel like this humanness with other people, you know? Man, like what I always tell people is like, dude, when you work step 11, you just feel so good, like being connected to like some type of spirit. Like, you know, what I always tell people is like one of the most spiritual things you could do in the like ever is like when I wake up in the morning, I say good morning to strangers.
It is powerful.
Because it's like, it just is like in the morning, everyone's like, oh, whatever. But like to be able to just talk to a stranger and say good morning.
Good morning.
It's like, it feels good to have so much energy that you just want to like talk to people.
Random strangers. And just bring kindness into their life.
Yeah.
So I remember my sponsor telling me one thing that was real hard too early. He told me, he said, when you get home, this was earlier in this episode, but he said, I want you to go in the mirror in your bathroom, close the door, look at yourself and tell yourself, I love you. And I could not do it in the beginning. I could not look myself in the eyes and say, I love you. It took a while for me to like truly like look at myself in the mirror and be like, I love you. And like be able to say, I love you to myself. Because he said, until you love yourself, you're not capable of loving anyone else. That goes back to the relationship thing of like, he would always tell me like, what good are you? What do you bring to a female's life? Because you look back at your life, you've been destructive to all these women that you've ever dated. You've been destructive to your friends. Like what godly things do you bring to anybody else right now? None.
I always tell people, you can't pour from an empty cup.
You can't. This is a really cool story. So we get into 8 and 9, putting down the amends. By this time, I start making, I'm like probably about 9 months sober, making a little bit more money. I wrote down on my A-step, one of the guys that we bought was that gentleman, Robert Bowman, the one I got the $4,000 check from. And I had taken probably $10,000 total in from him. I had his number still. And I call him up. I do 8th step, I get to my 9th. I asked my sponsor what to do. He said, call him. And I'm like, what do you mean? He said, just call him. Tell him what happened. See what he wants. So I call him up. And this guy had been like, not just by me, he'd been scammed by a lot of people. And I call him. I said, I wronged you. I said, I stole money from you and I lied to you, manipulated you and told you things that weren't true. I said, I'm not making a ton of money right now, but I want to start paying you back. And this guy was like in shock. He's like, what? He's like, you want to pay? He's like, are you serious? He's like, this guy had really sadly had got caught up in this whole timeshare scam and he had lost he was a Bank of America banker for like 30 years and he had lost his whole life savings on trying to sell these timeshares and getting scammed by these people. And it's almost like you get trapped in a hole. That you're sending the money and they're not going to sell, but like you don't have another choice because you already lost so much. So I start paying him back. I start like $100 a week. And then as my job increases, it gets a little better. Then I start making $200 a week. I start paying him $300 a week, tallied it all up. And when I had about a year and a half sober, I'd go to Western Union. I'd send him Western Union. He was in Georgia. So I'd send him to Western Union. I'd do it every Friday after work. And I'd call him after. And I would say, hey, Rob, what's going on, buddy? I said, we'd check in. We talk about life. He'd ask how I was doing. We became friends. Wow. I sent him the last payment. I think I owed him $500 left. And I was like, I was paying him maybe $100, $300 a week, whatever, but I sent him $500 at one shot. And I go to call him and say, hey, Robert, I sent you like the last $500. And I call, this guy picks up the phone and he's like, hey, this is John Bowman. And I'm like, where's Robert? And he goes, is this Sam? And I said, yeah. And he's like, my dad told me you're one of his best friends. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And he said, yeah, he told me that you restored his faith in humanity. He actually passed away this morning.
Oh my God.
And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, you restored this guy's faith in humanity. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart because as he turned out, I didn't know he had cancer this whole time and he was dying. And, the guy was in his 80s. And as I was making these payments, he would always tell me these life stories about his wife that passed away and stuff. And I didn't pick up on it at the time, but like it was a lot of like his dying wishes and telling me about life and things he wished he did. And, it was really cool to like, now that I look back on it, that this guy, I had somebody in the last 6 months of their life who knew they were dying giving me life advice.
Wow.
And I didn't really think about it during it. And I didn't realize it till after because he never told me that he was sick. It was powerful. That was really powerful. And his son was just like, thank you. And, he's like, he passed away. And, I just want to tell you, like, as he said, he's like within the last hour of his dying moments, he was talking about you and this guy that sends him money every week and that he wronged him and all this stuff. And I was like, that is like those amends you make that are like.
And what I always tell people when they have experiences like that, is like, this isn't the result of staying clean. This is the result of working the steps.
It's not staying clean.
Yeah, it's like staying clean.
If I stay clean, none of that happens.
None of that happens. You don't meet the guy, you give back the money, whatever. You might think about it, you might whatever. But it's like when you work the steps, it puts you out of your comfort zone and into this other track. So I always tell people like, dude, there's a using track, there's an abstinence track, and there's a recovery track.
Which one are you going to do?
And the recovery track is like, dude, it's going to be, it's literally like an acid trip.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about the recovery track, and you can relate this, we all can, you've been around long enough. My recovery's been like the stock market, right? sometimes I am on fire and I'm going up and up and up. And then I start slacking and I'll make one small compromise, which becomes two compromise. I'll go into less meetings, sponsoring less guys. I'm doing less stuff. And then I start to feel pain, emotional pain. Could I keep going? I don't know how long I'm going to go deep before eventually I'd pick up probably, but I maybe not. I don't know. I get real miserable and then I recommit and then I start to go back up again. So my sobriety is continuously trended upwards. There's definitely peaks and valleys. And I can tell you that in the valleys, when I'm just abstinent and I'm not working a program, even though I am in the program and involved in it, there are plenty of times where I'll go a month without going to a meeting. And I'm like, I feel like crap. It sucks. It's horrible. And any day, choose recovery over any other modality.
Last year is probably the most stressful, craziest years of my life, period, financially, emotionally, whatever. But I was so plugged into the program. It was awesome.
One of the best, right?
It was like one of the best.
Doesn't matter what happens.
It was
on the
like, dude, all this stuff was going on. And like this guy, Jeff, I remember this one day I was like stressing out with him and he was like, what's worst case scenario?
I love that line.
He's like, what's worst case scenario? You move in with your parents.
Yeah. What's bad about that?
Mom cooks great.
Meals? Yeah.
You know, he's like, dude, you'd probably be at your parents' house for a week. You figure something out.
Yeah.
He's like, what's the worst case scenario? File chapter 11 bankruptcy, you'll be fine.
You're fine. It's never that bad. It's all in our heads.
And it's like, when he said that, I was like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, you look at it, right? So fear is always two things, right? So it's losing something we have or not getting something we want. And when you break it down and stem your fear down to just those two things and look at all your fears, whether it's death, whether it's losing somebody, whether it's a girl leaving you, whether it's whatever it is, and you just stem them down to those two basic human concepts, becomes so light and like not that scary anymore.
Yeah, and it's like when you're plugged into the program, you kind of go back to those first couple years clean where like nothing fucking mattered anyway.
I didn't have anything. And I was so happy.
Awesome.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I tell people that all the time. When they're like early in sobriety, because like they'll see me and they're like, oh,
you have all this
you got
stuff,
a car, you got a house, you got a wife, you got a baby, you're traveling, you're doing cool things. And I'm like sitting there and I'm like, yeah, but I'm jealous of you. I said, you don't have any of those. I said, trust me, you get all this stuff. A lot more worries start to happen.
I remember this one time I was with my boy Kev and we were like at the treatment center. And there was this kid there. He was just like moping around, like, oh, I don't want to be here or whatever. And he was like talking to Kev, like, yo, I want what you guys have. Like, you guys, get to do all this stuff or whatever. And I remember Kev was like, dude, how old are you? He's like, I'm 19. He's like, bro, I would chop my dick off right now to be 19.
To go back, yeah.
And it's like, sometimes we don't know what we have.
You don't.
We just don't know what we have and how good it is right now. And like, we just miss it. Like, honestly, being happy is just like opening your eyes to like what is already going good, not like more.
Yeah. Being happy.
When you get the car you want, there's gonna be another car you want.
Yeah.
When you get another car you want, there's gonna be another car you want.
Being happy is better than anything in the world. There's nothing, and there's no material item. There's nothing outside of you that's gonna make you happy.
Or just being content.
Yeah. Being like serene. Feeling at peace.
Yeah, it's awesome. And honestly, it's like, dude, when people are snorting Oxycontin, that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, it's that feeling.
Yeah, it's that feeling that overcomes where it's like, dude, I remember when I used to get high, I was so fucking desperate. I just needed the relief because once I snorted that pill or I did that hit of crack, like the drug test in the morning didn't matter. My fucking parents bitching at me didn't matter. Like nothing mattered. Like once I got high, all that shit just went away. And it's like we find that through the program.
You literally took the words out of my mouth. I say that almost every meeting when I'm summing up. I say the 12 steps for me did the same things the drugs did. So, the feeling before, whether, you have the physical sickness, but the true mental feeling before we talked about it multiple times in the story, that restlessness, irritable, discontent. You're worried about your past, all the shame and guilt you have. You're worried about your future, where you're going in life. You're worried about what everybody's thinking about you because you care so much about what other people think about you because it is that you're just insecure about yourself. And then as soon as you put that substance in your body, everything's good and everything feels fine. And you get that warm, fuzzy feeling. It's the same thing the steps do. It's the same exact feeling. It's that warm, fuzzy feeling of serenity and peace. It's all those things outside go away, except this time you're tied in with God. And when you're tied in with a God, your God, a higher power, whatever it may be, you're unstoppable. Nothing. There's nothing. So I'll finish up real quick with the end of it. So I stayed at the halfway house. By the end of it, that hardcore guy that was so brutal and making me wake up for chores, he didn't care if I left for 2 weeks or 2 months at a time. I would go home to Maryland. I would start staying at people's houses and start to get freedom. You know, it was like I slowly earned my freedom back, kind of. It was really good that happened, because that kind of led me to the way. And I got into step 10, which taught me, which is something one of my goals this year. My goal this year was to have routine, to stick to my routine, and to have discipline. And discipline really is a spiritual practice. And I wanted to be disciplined in everything I do. And that's part of what 10 brings. And I know when I'm not doing my 10 step and I'm not doing my morning routine and my evening routine, and I don't have those in, nothing in between goes to shit. And when I am doing those, everything's regimented and it's organized, and I feel good, and I'm spiritual, and I feel good, and I know I'm doing it. And that's really what it's keeping. And then 11 is, you know, digging on the spirit, the world of spirit. And that goes so beyond this program. So when it comes to 11, like, this is kind of like the kindergarten, and, you know, we like to read, I dig in. I mean, I've found everything from reading books on quantum physics to listening to different spiritual teachers. I've studied Buddhism, Hinduism, every religion there is, and I have learned amazing bits from all of them. I've listened to different gurus and teachers and professors and so many different people, and just constantly wanting to incorporate the knowledge, and especially knowledge of the spiritual world, into my life. And that's what it is. And then I've gotten into things like float tanks, sensory deprivation meditation, saunas, heat therapy, cold therapy. All that stuff is really like a form of meditation, going on retreats, you know, and really like doing stuff like, you know, in the program. So I started a nonprofit in Haiti, or joined with Lyle. Lyle started it and took me down there. It was actually really, this is a great story too. So I had about 5-6 years clean, and I started making a little bit of money, and it got a little cocky. I think Lyle knew it. And God bless Lyle, he's a great guy. And I posted a picture in Dominican. I was at like resort in Dominican. I was on the beach, took a picture in a hammock with my feet up, and Lyle sends me a PM. He says, "Why don't you come to the other side of the island sometime?" In my mind, I'm like, you know, my ego kicks in. I'm like, oh, you think I won't? All right, I'll fucking go. Let's do it, you know? A month later, I go down to Haiti with him for the first time. It's like 2016, 17, somewhere around there. Never knew that I could love strangers so much, especially strangers that don't even speak my language. And I fell in love with these kids at the orphanage that he works at. I've gone all the time. We've done all kinds of cool projects down there. To be able to give back to that, and to go down there, this is another thing we talk about happiness. You're with people that live in the jungle, that aren't even counted on the Census Bureau in the country. They're not even counted as a human. And they are orphans who have lost their parents, or their parents can't afford to keep them, whatever it is. And they're living on an orphanage in dirt. They barely have enough food to get by in the middle of the mountains. And I will tell you what, those kids are happier than any kid I've ever met in America in my entire life. They are purely, truly happy and joy. They live in the moment. Everything is in the moment. They have a sense of culture and family. They are united. They have love. They are all there's a church down there, so they're very tied into God and to bringing principles of God. And not only just the kids, but the people, the adults there. You want to talk about like a happy group of people? They live in pure poverty and have nothing, and they are so happy. Every one of them has a smile on their face. They don't care about your possessions. So you meet someone anywhere in the Western world, what's the first thing they ask you almost every time?
What do you do?
What do you do? You meet someone in Haiti, you know what they ask you? Especially like at least in that part of Haiti, not all parts, but where we are is a place called Ghana Eves. It's like, basically it would be equal to like going to like the mountains of West Virginia here. You know what I mean? They ask you, how's your family doing? Ask you, how's your heart? How do you feel? Are you happy? That's the stuff they ask you. You know what I mean? They didn't care what I did. They didn't care where I came from. They don't care about anything. They want to know how my family is. How's my heart? Why am I here? You know what I mean? Like, what do I want to try to do to help them? You know, who in the town, they'll tell me like, hey, this guy needs help, or do you have an idea to help this problem or that problem? And then they'll ask me like, how are you feeling? Like, are you happy? And how is my family? You know? And they tell me about their family. And that is like a powerful thing, that when you see people that live in poverty that are happier than a lot of your friends and colleagues, and you're like, wow, these guys have nothing. They are living true poverty. It's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. So that was a really powerful, you know, going to step 11 experience. But we will go. We will definitely go whenever they had some major government turmoil. It's sad because the government's so messed up there, but the people are so amazing. Nicest people in the world. If you ever get like a cab driver that's from Haiti, talk to them for 20 minutes. They're the nicest people in the world. Then we got into step 12. And I always say the steps are really 6 steps, right? So every step is a problem and a solution, right? So step 1 is our problem, and step 12 is our solution. 2 is the problem, 3 is the solution, 4 is the problem, 5 is the solution, 6 to 7, 8 to 9, 10 to 11, right? So identify it and then come up with a solution and solve. We get to step 12. My son's like, go get a sponsee. Like, you're ready. Like, let's do this. Go commit service, do the coffee commitment, show up, and he's like, not even just in the program, show up for your family, show up for anybody that's a good person doing the right thing, bring joy to the lives of others. One of my favorite quotes is in ancient Egypt, when you would pass away, you go in front of their god Anubis, and they would ask you 2 questions to decide if you would get into their heaven. And they'd ask you, did you find joy in life? And most people say, yeah, like I had some good times, I had some fun. The second question they'd ask you is, did you bring joy to the lives of others? And in my mind, and I know yours too, because I know what kind of person you are, the true happiness really comes from bringing joy to the lives of other people. That's really what this is about. It's about bringing happiness to others. It's about bringing recovery to others. It's about changing their lives and seeing their lives and their family change, because there's no feeling, there's no high, there's no drug that's better than that. And I think that's probably I have my program, but it's also partly why I got into the space I did.
And it's like, happiness is great, but it's secondary to purpose.
100%.
Because it's like, when you have purpose, it doesn't matter if you're happy or not.
No, it doesn't.
Because you're on a mission.
You're on a mission.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, when you have a goal, like when you're running a marathon, it doesn't matter if your legs hurt, you're doing something. And then like when you complete the mission, you feel fulfilled. And fulfillment is different than you might not be happy after a marathon, but you feel a completion.
Yeah.
And you feel like there's a purpose.
And if you have purpose, even if it maybe happiness isn't always the right word, but you have joy for sure. And you'll feel that sense of content, fulfillment. And like you said, you might not be happy during it, but you're going to look back and you're going to have a big smile on your face.
Feels good to feel like progression. Like, humans need that progression, and we need a challenge, like that challenge and overcoming is really the only thing we do in life. But it's like, in recovery, like you really learn how to like dance with the life that is challenging, where like someone can die and I can think like, okay, well, at least I had them in my life. At least I can be there for the people who are alive. Or maybe I could use this to hug people a little bit more, as opposed to someone who doesn't have that 12-step program or some type of spirituality. They get more resentful. They stop believing in people. They disconnect more. Where it's like, when you're connected, when you have these adversities, you use it as the tool to go deeper.
The bad things and the hard things in your life, the things you have to overcome, are the best things in your life. And you look back at our recovery, and the worst thing that ever happened to us becomes the best thing ever. And I see that happen over and over and over again. It really is. It's the best thing. You look back, and that's when you remember probably when you first came into people, say, I'm a grateful addict. I'm a grateful recovering addict. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. And I'm like, are you fucking stupid?
Yeah.
Why would you be grateful to have a disease of addiction? This sucks.
Yeah, I gotta go to those meetings forever.
Yeah, this is people say to me all the time, you still go to those meetings? And I'm like, I'm not going because I have to. I'm going because I love it. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's a choice now. Throughout sobriety, I moved into it with a group of guys. We're all still sober today. Every one of us, we all stuck together. We all have families and kids, and we all went on our separate ways. But we all are still close, and everyone that stuck around, we're all still real tight stuff, like that really close-knit group of friends that we kind of went through together. Got to do the most amazing things and meet the most amazing people and experience things that I never in a million years could have imagined I would have experienced if I wasn't in the program recovery. So one story that I like to talk about in recovery, for anyone that thinks they can't do it or that they don't have the will to do it. So my business partner at the treatment center dated this girl. Her name was Alexa. She had probably about a year sober, a year and a half sober, and her and my partner started dating. He was newly sober at the time. I didn't even know he'd be my business partner. She got about a year and a half sober. We're all out to dinner one night, and she just like starts to freak out, saying she has a terrible headache. And I'm like, dude, drink a Red Bull. Like, it always gets rid of a headache, She goes to the hospital, gets a scan. She's got glioblastoma brain cancer, which is like the single worst kind of cancer you can get. It's like what you see a lot of people in Oregon do the assisted suicides for. I watched her go through that. Man, was that a powerful experience. And I'll never forget one time, this was probably about 6 months before she passed. She went into a meeting. She had a fully shaved head. She wore a wig. She stood up and she told the whole story about how she lost her entire family, how she came down. She gets a year sober, year and a half sober, finally gets in the program, gets diagnosed with terminal cancer, and just merged into it. And she had an entire room in tears. And at the end of it, after she told her whole story, and you hear kids talking, oh, my girl left me, or I can't get a promotion at my job, or I can only afford a BMW, I really want a Porsche, or just all these stupid fucking high class problems. And she takes her wig off. She got a huge scar down her head, and she's like, she's like, if I can stay sober, what's your fucking excuse? And you're just like, you have no excuse. And the girl, I remember, so I went to visit her at Duke when she was dying. within a couple weeks of passing away, and the doctors come in and be like, hey, Alexa, like, we're going to give you some, benzos, we're going to give you some painkillers. No, I'm going to die sober. She kept saying, I'm going to die sober. I don't care. I'm going to die sober. I don't care what pain it is. God's got my back. I'm going to die sober. And she fought that till the bitter end, until her last day of her life. And I like look back and I'm like, that girl is like my inspiration. I have a picture of her on my desk. I look at it every morning and I'm like, if that girl can stay sober and fight through all that, like in early sobriety too, years is early sobriety. Makes it so there's no excuse. There's no excuse, Yeah,
and it's like in the rooms we see like true power and courage and strength. And it's like when we're using, like we think like, the guy who could like rob a 7-Eleven's powerful.
Yeah, that guy's great.
We think like, oh, this guy's crazy or courage or whatever. And like, dude, in the rooms, like not just that, from a lot of women, bro. It's like, dude, when you see like how powerful like some of the women are,
they're powerhouses.
It's like, wow, you realize that we are so fallible, and like I have so many issues and some so dishonest and ungrateful, and you go to like some meetings, like bro, you'll go to a meeting that'll change your whole perspective, and
like that too.
And you'll drive home like, what was I even complaining about?
Yeah, what was I upset about? This problem that I obsessed about all day in my head that was so minimal and
then
stupid.
Like you meet and it's not just like you go to a movie, like you meet these people and you connect with them and you see them and like
you see how they live outside of it too. That's like the best part
like,
too.
I'm sure you have 1,000 stories like that.
Yeah. Oh, over and over. That's just one that's like so profound, but there's so many small versions of it and other versions of it, so anybody that's out there, like listen to the people that came before you, follow what they say. Get into that book, take what they say, get into a million other books too, read them, learn about them, always be expanding your horizon, your knowledge. You start to learn that like there's so many programs and things like recovery that are out there we never even knew about, and you start to dig into them. Like I know you got big into jujitsu and that's kind of like a spiritual practice. It really is.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's I'm dying to do it. You keep telling me to do it. I know, but everybody I know that does it says it's like life-changing. Like it teaches you so much about your life.
It's the most humbling thing you'll ever do. And it's also like, it's a lot like recovery, because if you do anything for a couple of years, you get pretty good at it.
Yeah.
So it's like even a couple classes. Like if you don't know how to shoot a gun, you take 5, 6, 7 classes with a professional. You're pretty solid at it. You know what I mean? It's like you might not be a pro, but like with jiu-jitsu, it's like, man, you could go every day for 2 years and you're just learning the basics. Like my friend's a purple belt and he was like, dude, your first 2 years, you're going to learn 5 moves and that's it. And you're just going to try to do those 5 moves. And it's like, I don't know, it's just so interesting how deep it can go and how many different types of things people can learn. And like, you think you're good or you think you're getting it, and then you go with someone who's been doing it for 15
I remember
or 20 years.
You told me the story of some girl that was like about 130 pounds and you said she submitted you in 30 seconds.
Multiple times, man. It's like multiple women submitted 5 times in 5 minutes with ease.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in
and you're like, you're on the street like, I'm a pretty strong guy.
I can jog 15
I'll just body
miles.
her.
I bench press 300 pounds and it's like, bro, this girl destroyed me. And I remember
30 seconds.
One of the coolest things was I was in California and I was training at some random gym. And there was this little Asian guy, looked like Mr. Miyagi. He must have been like 65 years old, gray beard, old little Asian man. And he was a black belt. So like, obviously when you see someone's belt, you're like, damn. And he said, me and my son started 12 years ago and we were both white belts. And I think he must have been like 50 something, right?
Yeah.
This old man destroyed me. But
you rolled with him?
Yeah, when we rolled. But he was so friendly. He just saying, there you go. You got it. You got it. Oh, you're a natural. You're a natural. You got it. And then he'd be like, oh, you're hurting me. Just kidding. And then he would armbar me or something.
Just put you down.
Yeah, he would be like, oh, you really got me this time. No, you didn't. And then like he would just
slipped out of it.
He would just like show me, he's like, oh, you're so strong, but I have technique. And he would just like, and it's just so interesting, man. But it's like in recovery, like I always try to do something that makes me feel like a newcomer.
Yeah.
So when you do something that you're not good at and you're like the bottom of the totem pole there, it's like
you're the newcomer again.
It feels good. It feels good to like relive that whole experience.
Yeah, it is. It's like starting your recovery again. Like you're the newcomer when you walk in those rooms.
And it's like that you're gonna suck for 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. So my wife and I started doing like professional like ballroom dancing. And it's the same thing. Yeah, like it's the same
that's crazy.
Exact thing. Like, we're learning tango and waltz and all stuff. But I go in.
Good? Are you good now?
I'm getting better. It's exactly like you said, like jujitsu. Like you go in and you start doing it. You know, you have a teacher. You know, I can dance really well with the teachers. Sort of like you probably roll great with your teachers because they're easy. I mean, they show you how to do it. And, you know, we'll start doing it. And I'm like, oh, I'm on a roll. And then you sit back and you watch these pros go out there and do it. And you're just like, I'm terrible. You're like, I suck. Like I got a long way to go to get to like, you know, the moves that they're doing and it's just, they're so natural at it and it looks so easy and they flow so amazing. But yeah, I really want to get into the jiu-jitsu, but this was been a cool one too. But same thing, feeling like a newcomer. We're about a year and a half into it.
Wow.
It's the same thing. It's very similar. It's like you can go so in depth with the amount of moves people doing for 30, 40 years and they're still learning, you know?
Yeah.
And there's so many types of dances too, similar to how there's so many types of martial arts.
And
types
it's like
of jiu-jitsu.
sometimes like, you know, you could live your whole life and not master anything.
Nothing. Yeah.
It's like, you know, you meet people all the time and you're like, what do you do? They don't do anything.
I know. But that stuff's great. I love challenges.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thank you for coming on the show. I love you. Your message was very powerful.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I appreciate you having me, man.
Absolutely.
It's a great show. I look forward to the podcast.
This show is not affiliated with any specific 12-step program. If you or a loved one is struggling with an addiction, please find a local 12-step meeting. If you believe you may need detox or drug treatment of any kind, please call 833-999-1877 to speak to a specialist. The show is sponsored by United Recovery Project, a state-of-the-art drug and alcohol rehab facility. You can visit our website at unitedrecoveryproject.com.